The dim emergency lights flickered across the curved metal walls of Habitat Ring 7. Inside, dozens of pale-skinned beings huddled around failing heat units, their large eyes adapted to the darkness that had become their constant companion. They were the last survivors of the planet Del, now reduced to living in the shadows of an asteroid belt that no one else wanted. Tom, the colony's lead engineer, pressed his hand against a cracked display panel. The numbers weren't good. Their main power core was operating at just 20% capacity, and 3 of their 7 habitats were running on backup systems. He pulled his worn jacket tighter around his thin frame and made his way to the council chamber. "We lost another recycling unit in Ring 4, Tom announced to the 5 council members seated around the salvage table. Their faces, already naturally pale, seemed to grow even whiter at the news. Mary, the head of the council, closed her eyes briefly. "That's the 3rd one this month. How many people will we need to relocate?" "At least 40, Tom replied, his voice heavy. "Ring 4 won't be habitable within a week." The council chamber fell silent. They all knew what this meant. Their colony of 300 survivors was being forced to crowd into increasingly smaller spaces. Soon, they wouldn't have room to move, let alone live. Outside their viewport, the endless field of asteroids drifted by, a graveyard of rock and ice that had become their reluctant home. 5 years had passed since their planet's core had destabilized, forcing them to flee with whatever they could salvage. 5 years of asking for help from every advanced civilization they could contact. 5 years of being turned away. The Trade Federation's response came in today. Bob, their communications officer, said quietly. "They've denied our request for aid again, said we don't have anything valuable enough to trade." Mary's fingers traced the edge of an old datapad. "And the Unity Alliance. They suggested we dissolve our colony and integrate individually into their worker programs." Bob's voice carried a bitter edge. "Basically, they want us to become their servants." The Delians had never been a technologically advanced species. Their strength had always been in their ability to adapt, to survive in harsh conditions using minimal resources. But the galactic community saw this as primitive, considering them barely more evolved than animals. "There's a merchant guild station 3 systems away," Tom suggested, though his tone lacked hope. "We haven't tried them yet." "They won't help," Mary said, standing to look out at the asteroids. "None of them will. They see us as a burden, a dying species not worth saving." In Ring 5, children played among the makeshift shelters, their games invented from whatever scraps they could find. Their parents watched with worried eyes, knowing their children had never seen the green fields of Del, never felt real gravity beneath their feet. The colony's food synthesizers wheezed and sputtered, producing barely enough nutrient paste to keep everyone alive. They had cannibalized parts from 3 empty habitat rings to keep these essential systems running. But it was like trying to plug holes in a sinking ship. There were always more problems than solutions. As night cycle approached in the habitats, families gathered in their cramped quarters, sharing body heat to stay warm. Stories were told of their lost home, of the crystal caves and floating forests that once made Del beautiful. The children listened wide-eyed, too young to remember, but old enough to understand what they had lost. In her private quarters, Mary reviewed their dwindling supplies one more time. Their situation was becoming critical. Without help, they had perhaps 2 months before complete system failure. 2 months before 300 survivors of a dead world would join their planet in extinction. She looked at the small holo image of Del, its once beautiful surface now cracked and broken. "There has to be someone," she whispered to the empty room. "Someone who will see us as more than just a burden." Unknown to Mary, at that very moment, a small human cargo ship was making a course correction that would bring it within range of their distress beacon. Help was coming, but not from any of the advanced civilizations they had begged for assistance. It would come from a species that knew all too well what it meant to be underestimated. The message center's alert chimed, drawing Bob away from his routine maintenance. His hands trembled as he read the incoming transmission. Another rejection, this time from the Merchants Scientific Coalition. Their words were polite but cutting. Your species lacks the technological advancement required for membership consideration. He slumped in his chair, surrounded by the aging communication equipment they'd salvaged from their exodus. The screens around him displayed a constant stream of distress signals, broadcasting their plea for help into the vast emptiness of space. Most went unanswered. Those that received responses only brought more disappointment. In the main medical bay, Dr. Pete worked frantically to keep their last working medical scanner operational. The device sparked, sending a shower of tiny lights across his workspace. "Hold on," he muttered, more to himself than the machine. "Just a little longer." A young mother stood nearby, cradling her coughing child. The medical bay's air filters were failing, like everything else in their colony. The child's lungs weren't adapted to the increasingly poor air quality. Dr. Pete knew there were dozens more like him, slowly being poisoned by their own deteriorating life support systems. "I'm sorry," he said to the mother, "but the scanner's dead. I'll have to diagnose the old way." He pressed his ear to the child's chest, listening to the wheeze in his breathing. Without proper medical equipment, he could only guess at treatments. Meanwhile, in the council chamber, Mary faced another crisis. The holographic display showed their asteroid belt's position relative to nearby systems. Red markers indicated all the civilizations that had rejected their appeals for help. "The Stellar Commerce Guild says we're too far gone," Tom reported, his voice tight with frustration. "They claim helping us would be a waste of resources. The unified systems suggested we should have developed better technology before our planet's core destabilized." Mary's fist struck the table. "As if we chose this. As if we wanted our world to die." The colony's food stores were reaching critical levels. Their last functioning synthesizer could only produce a fraction of what they needed. Rationing had begun 3 weeks ago, with adults receiving half portions so the children could eat their fill. In Habitat Ring 6, a group of engineers worked to repair a crucial oxygen recycler. Their tools were makeshift, crafted from salvaged parts. The more advanced species mocked their primitive technology, but it was all they had. "The seals are failing," one engineer called out. "We need molecular bonding tape." "We used the last of it on Ring 3's water purifier," another responded grimly. Above them, through the transparent ceiling panels, the stars shone with cold indifference. Somewhere out there, advanced civilizations continued their lives in comfort, while 300 survivors fought for every breath. A council member named Bill entered the chamber with a new report. The Unity Alliance sent another message. "They're offering to take 50 of our children, if we agree to give up all parental rights. They want to properly civilize them." The room erupted in angry murmurs. The Unity Alliance was known for its rehabilitation programs, erasing cultural identities in favor of their own standards. "Never," Mary declared, her voice firm despite her exhaustion. "We've lost our world. We won't lose our children too." The day cycle dimmed to night, power conservation protocols automatically reducing light levels. In their quarters, families shared meals of thin nutrient paste, telling stories of Dell to keep their heritage alive. They spoke of crystal caves that sang in the wind, of floating forests where their ancestors built homes in the canopy, of a culture that valued adaptation and survival above technological advancement. Outside, in the endless dark between the asteroids, their distress beacons continued their lonely broadcast. The message was simple: "We are the people of Dell. We need help. We are dying. Please respond." Most ships that passed through the sector ignored the signal. Some logged it as space debris. Others dismissed it as the last gasp of a dying species. But somewhere in that vast darkness, a small human cargo ship picked up the signal. Its pilot, unlike the others, decided to listen. The proximity alarm on Jack's cargo ship, the Star Runner, blared to life. He rubbed his tired eyes, checking the readout. The distress signal, weak but persistent, pulsed from a nearby asteroid field. "Ship's computer, analyze signal," Jack commanded, reaching for his coffee mug. The computer's response was immediate, signal originating from multiple sources within asteroid belt. Pattern suggests artificial habitats. Life signs detected. Jack frowned. This route was supposed to be empty. Just a quick cargo run between trading posts. He had a schedule to keep, deadlines to meet. But the signal kept blinking, a desperate plea in the darkness. "Damn it," he muttered, already adjusting his course. "Computer, begin approach pattern. Let's see who's out here in the middle of nowhere." As the Star Runner drew closer, Jack's sensors revealed the true scope of the situation. 7 massive habitat rings were anchored to various asteroids, though only 4 showed significant power signatures. The construction was unlike anything he'd seen before, a hybrid of salvaged parts and ingenious adaptations. "This is cargo vessel Star Runner to Habitat Colony," Jack broadcast. "Received your distress signal. Do you copy?" The response was immediate, tinged with disbelief. "This is Colony Control. We copy. You're actually responding." "Well, yeah," Jack replied, guiding his ship toward their main docking port. "That's generally what you do when someone needs help." Through the viewport, he could see the colony clearly now. The habitats were in rough shape, held together by what looked like sheer determination and creative engineering. The docking port itself was a masterpiece of improvisation, adapted to fit multiple ship types. "Warning, Colony Control transmitted. Our docking systems are not standard." Jack chuckled. "Don't worry. I've docked with weirder. Just guide me in." The docking procedure was tricky, but Jack had years of experience maneuvering in tight spaces. With careful adjustments, he managed to secure his ship to their port. The airlock cycle was manual, another sign of their limited resources. When the inner door finally opened, Jack found himself facing a group of pale-skinned beings with large, dark eyes. They stared at him with a mixture of hope and wariness. He noticed how thin they were, how their clothes showed signs of multiple repairs. "I'm Jack," he said simply, stepping through the airlock. "Picked up your signal. Thought I'd see what's wrong." The colony's council members introduced themselves, led by Mary. As they explained their situation, their dying planet, their exodus, the constant rejections from other civilizations, Jack's expression grew increasingly troubled. "Let me get this straight," he interrupted. "You managed to evacuate your entire population, set up a colony in an asteroid field, and keep it running for 5 years with salvaged equipment." They nodded uncertainly, perhaps expecting more mockery about their primitive methods. Instead, Jack whistled in appreciation. "That's impressive as hell. Mind showing me around?" The council members exchanged surprised glances. This wasn't the reaction they were used to. Mary led the tour, showing Jack their jury-rigged systems, the creative solutions they'd developed to survive. In the medical bay, Jack watched Dr. Pete trying to repair the scanner. Without a word, he pulled a portable diagnostic unit from his pocket and handed it over. "Here. It's not much, but it should help until we can get you better equipment." "We?" Dr. Pete asked, hope creeping into his voice. "Look," Jack said, turning to address the growing crowd of colonists. "What you've done here, surviving against these odds, it's remarkable. Where I come from, we had to claw our way up from nothing too. We humans know what it's like to be underestimated." He glanced at his cargo manifest on his tablet. "I've got supplies I can spare, and I know other traders who'll help once they hear about you. More importantly, I've got some ideas about how we can improve your systems using what you already have." For the first time in years, the colonists felt something they'd almost forgotten: hope. "But," Jack added with a grin, "first, I'm gonna need to hear more about these crystal caves and floating forests. Sounds like your world was something special." The colonists smiled. Finally, someone wanted to listen to their stories. The Star Runner's cargo hold opened, revealing stacks of supplies Jack had decided to spare. But more valuable than the supplies was the knowledge he brought. Standing in the engineering center with Tom, Jack examined their makeshift power distribution system. "You know," Jack said, running his hand along a jury-rigged power conduit, "everyone's been looking at this all wrong. They see primitive tech, but I see genius. You've created working systems from scraps that most people would have tossed away." Tom watched nervously as Jack traced the power flows on a worn diagram. "The other species said our methods were inefficient." "Inefficient?" Jack laughed. "Let me tell you about inefficient. Humans once powered entire cities by burning rocks we dug from the ground. But we survived, we adapted, and we learned, just like you're doing." In the medical bay, Jack helped Dr. Pete modify the portable diagnostic unit to interface with their existing equipment. His fingers flew across the keypad, making adjustments. "The trick isn't to replace everything," Jack explained. "It's to make what you have work better. Your people understand adaptation better than most. You just need to apply that skill differently." The colonists gathered around, watching in amazement as the hybrid system came to life. The scanner's display was clearer than it had been in months. Later, in Habitat Ring 5, Jack noticed something peculiar about the wall panels. "These absorb heat, don't they?" he asked, touching the surface. Mary nodded. "It's a natural ability of our people. We can sense and channel thermal energy. The panels are made from materials from our homeworld." Jack's eyes lit up. "That's not primitive. That's revolutionary. You're not using technology to generate heat. You're working with natural energy flows." He pulled out his tablet, sketching quickly. "If we modify your existing power grid to work with this ability." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Jack taught them human engineering principles while learning about their natural abilities. Together, they began creating something entirely new. In Ring 7, they installed a hybrid thermal regulation system that used the colonists' natural heat channeling abilities combined with modified human technology. Power consumption dropped by 40%. "See, this is what everyone else missed," Jack said, watching the power readings stabilize. "They were so focused on what you couldn't do, they never saw what you could do differently." The food synthesizers were next. Jack showed them how to reconfigure the machines to work with their unique biological requirements. "Your bodies process nutrients differently than most species," he explained. "These machines were trying to produce standard protein compounds, but you need something else entirely." Each success brought new hope. The colonists began to see their primitive solutions in a new light. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were innovating. In the council chamber, Jack spread out diagrams showing further modifications they could make. "Your ability to adapt isn't a weakness. It's your greatest strength. While other species rely on complex technology, you can work with basic materials in ways they never imagined." Mary watched as her people worked alongside Jack, their confidence growing with each small victory. "Why are you helping us?" she finally asked. "Everyone else saw us as a burden." Jack paused in his work, considering the question. "Humans know what it's like to be dismissed as primitive. Our history is full of people who said we couldn't do things, that we weren't advanced enough. But we never let that stop us." He gestured to the bustling activity around them. "Look at what you've accomplished with practically nothing. Imagine what you could do with just a little support and the right perspective." As the day cycle ended, Jack stood at a viewport, watching the asteroids drift by. Behind him, the habitat hummed with new energy, both literal and spiritual. The colonists moved with purpose now, their heads held higher. They weren't just fixing things anymore. They were building something new, something that combined the best of their natural abilities with human ingenuity. It wasn't the advanced technology other species prized, but it was something perhaps more valuable. Innovation born from necessity and strengthened by understanding. The colony was changing, one small improvement at a time. And this was just the beginning. "Keep your hand steady," Jack instructed, guiding a young colonist named Rick through the process of calibrating a power converter. "Feel the energy flow. Your natural sensitivity to thermal changes is perfect for this kind of work." 3 weeks had passed since Jack's arrival, and the colony was transforming. The cargo hold of the Star Runner had become a makeshift classroom where colonists learned to merge their natural abilities with basic engineering principles. "I've got friends coming," Jack announced during the morning council meeting. "Other human traders who understand what we're trying to do here. They're bringing more supplies and knowledge." True to his word, within days, 3 more human ships arrived. Each brought different expertise and resources. Bill, a hydroponics specialist, showed the colonists how to create sustainable food gardens using their thermal sensing abilities to maintain perfect growing conditions. "Your people can detect temperature variations we need expensive equipment to measure," Bill explained, watching as colonists used their abilities to monitor the newly planted seeds. "This isn't primitive, it's evolutionary advantage." In Ring 4, a human engineer named Kate taught a group how to repurpose old communication arrays. "The key is working with what you have," she demonstrated, her hands deep in circuitry. Humans spent centuries doing exactly this, taking existing technology and adapting it in new ways. The colony's children proved especially quick to learn. Their natural adaptability, combined with human teaching methods, led to remarkable innovations. They found ways to use their inherited abilities that even their parents hadn't considered. "Look!" a young colonist called out, showing how she could create a perfect seal in damaged pipes by sensing and manipulating temperature differentials. "The crack fixes itself if you get the heat flow just right." Jack watched with pride as the colonists grew more confident. They began developing their own hybrid technologies, combining their natural talents with human engineering principles. What other species had dismissed as primitive was becoming something entirely new. In the medical bay, Dr. Pete worked with a human doctor to create diagnostic tools that used the colonists' thermal sensitivity. "Your people can detect fever and inflammation naturally," the human doctor explained. "We just need to give you tools to measure and record what you're already sensing." The colony's food crisis began to ease as they applied their new knowledge. The synthesizers, now modified to work with their biological needs, operated at peak efficiency. The hydroponics garden started producing fresh food for the first time in years. "We're not just surviving anymore," Mary observed, watching her people work. "We're growing, learning, becoming something new." The humans brought more than just technical knowledge. They shared stories of Earth's history, of times when humanity had faced similar challenges. The colonists found strength in these tales of persistence and adaptation. "Our ancestors once crossed oceans in wooden boats," Jack told them during an evening gathering. "They looked up at the stars and dreamed of reaching them, even when everyone said it was impossible. Your people have that same spirit." The biggest change was in the colonists' attitude. No longer did they see themselves as refugees barely clinging to existence. They were pioneers, creating new ways of living and working that combined the best of their abilities with human innovation. "Watch closely," Tom instructed a group of young engineers. "Feel how the power flows change when we adjust the thermal exchangers. Our ability to sense these changes means we can fine-tune systems in ways other species can't." In the council chamber, Mary reviewed reports of their progress. Power efficiency was up by 60%. Medical emergencies had dropped significantly. The population was healthier, happier, and hopeful about the future. "We're not teaching them," Jack said quietly, standing beside her. "We're just showing them how to use what they already know in new ways. The real innovation is coming from your people." Outside the habitats, the asteroid field that had once seemed like a prison now felt like a frontier of possibility. The colonists moved between the rings with growing confidence, their natural abilities and new knowledge working in harmony. They were building something unique, not a copy of their lost world or an imitation of other civilizations, but something entirely their own. A civilization born from the marriage of natural talent and human ingenuity. And they were just getting started. 6 months had transformed the colony beyond recognition. The once dimly lit corridors now glowed with efficient hybrid lighting systems that used a fraction of the power. Habitat Ring 4, previously abandoned, had been completely revitalized using their new technologies. Trading vessel requesting docking permission, announced Bob from the communications center, no longer using the salvaged equipment, but a new hybrid system that amplified signals using their natural thermal sensitivity. Another one? Mary asked, though she already knew the answer. Word had spread through the trading networks about the unique technologies being developed in the asteroid belt colony. The colony's new reputation had begun with a simple innovation: temperature-regulated storage units that required no power source, using only the colonists' natural abilities and simple mechanical principles Jack had taught them. When the first trading ship discovered their cargo arrived in perfect condition, others quickly followed. In the main engineering hub, Tom supervised the installation of their latest creation, a thermal dynamic power core that produced 3 times the energy of standard systems by incorporating their species' natural heat channeling abilities. The Merchants Guild representative will be arriving tomorrow, he reported to Mary. They're interested in licensing our designs. The same guild that had rejected their plea for help months ago was now eager to do business. The colonists' hybrid technology was proving more efficient and reliable than many standard systems. In the hydroponics gardens, lush plants grew in precisely maintained conditions. The colonists' ability to sense and adjust temperature and moisture levels had created growing conditions that produced exceptional yields. 3 other colonies had already requested their consulting services for similar setups. We've received another request for our medical scanning technology, Dr. Peep announced during the council meeting. The diagnostic systems they developed, combining their natural sensitivity with modified human medical equipment, could detect ailments before they showed visible symptoms. Jack, who had stayed on as an advisor, smiled at their progress. Remember when other species called you primitive? Now they're lining up to learn from you. The colony's children attended classes in newly established learning centers, studying both their traditional knowledge and the engineering principles the humans had taught them. They were developing innovations that neither species could have created alone. Look at this, a young student demonstrated to her class, showing how she'd modified a standard power cell to respond to their thermal sensing abilities. It can now run for twice as long and recharge in half the time. The colony's population had grown as scattered survivors of Dell, hearing of their success, made their way to the asteroid belt. Each new arrival brought more knowledge and abilities to contribute to their growing civilization. In the newly constructed research center, teams of colonists worked on expanding their technological innovations. They weren't just solving their own problems anymore. They were developing solutions that could benefit multiple species. The Unity Alliance sent another message. Bob announced with a hint of irony. They're offering us a seat on their scientific council. The same organization that had suggested they become servants was now seeking their expertise. Mary stood in the observation dome, watching ships dock and depart from their now bustling port. Trade vessels arrived daily, bringing supplies and leaving with colony-developed technology. Their asteroid belt, once a place of exile, had become a hub of innovation. We're receiving applications from other species, Tom mentioned during the evening council session. They want to learn our methods. The council chamber, now housed in a properly maintained facility, was a far cry from the desperate meeting place of months ago. Holograms displayed their latest projects, while representatives from various trading organizations waited for appointments. We should establish a formal training program, Mary suggested. Share our knowledge the way the humans shared with us. The colony had developed its own unique culture, one that honored their traditional abilities while embracing innovation. They were neither primitive nor conventionally advanced, but something entirely new. In his quarters, Jack reviewed messages from other human traders who'd helped the colony. They've done more than just survive, he wrote. They've shown the galaxy a new way of looking at progress. The colonists gathered that evening for their traditional storytelling, but now their tales included not just memories of Dell, but visions of a future they were building. A future where being different didn't mean being lesser, where adaptation was recognized as strength, and where innovation came in many forms. 1 year after Jack's first arrival, the asteroid belt colony hosted its first Galactic Innovation Summit. Representatives from 20 different species filled the newly constructed conference center in what was now called New Del Station. "Welcome," Mary addressed the assembled delegates. "A year ago, we were refugees struggling to survive. Today, we stand before you as partners in building a better future for all species." The station had grown into a sprawling complex of interconnected habitats, each showcasing different aspects of their hybrid technology. The original 7 rings remained, now restored and serving as historical monuments to their journey. In the technology demonstration area, Tom led a group of wide-eyed representatives through their latest innovations. "This environmental control system," he explained, "combines our natural thermal sensing abilities with modified human engineering principles. It uses 70% less energy than standard systems while providing more precise control." The Medical Exchange Center, once a cramped bay with failing equipment, now hosted doctors from various species learning to integrate the colonists' diagnostic methods into their own practices. Dr. Pete supervised teams developing new medical technologies that combine different species' natural abilities. "Their methods have revolutionized early disease detection," a Unity Alliance medical officer admitted. "We were wrong to dismiss them as primitive." In the station's educational wing, young colonists taught visitors their unique approach to technology and adaptation. The children moved confidently among the various species, proud of their heritage and their innovations. "Watch this," a young colonist demonstrated to an amazed group of engineers, showing how they could detect and repair microscopic system flaws using only their natural abilities and simple tools. The trading docks bustled with constant activity. Ships from all corners of the galaxy arrived daily, bringing resources and leaving with New Del technology. The colony that once begged for help now had a waiting list of trading partners. Jack, who had become the station's official human liaison, stood with Mary watching the proceedings. "You've come further than I ever imagined," he said. "Thanks to you and humanity," Mary replied. "You saw potential where others saw only weakness." "No," Jack corrected. "We just helped you see what was already there. Everything else came from your people." The Merchants Guild, which had once rejected them, now maintained a permanent office on the station. Their representatives worked closely with colonist innovators, helping distribute their technologies throughout the galaxy. In the research laboratories, teams of colonists worked alongside scientists from other species, developing new hybrid technologies that combined various natural abilities. What had started as survival adaptations had grown into a new field of biological technological integration. "The Stellar Commerce Guild has approved your membership application," Bob announced during the summit. "They're classifying New Del Station as a premier innovation center." The council chamber, now an impressive facility featuring their latest technological achievements, hosted regular meetings with representatives from various galactic organizations. The colonists' unique perspective on problem-solving had become highly valued. "We're receiving more applications for our education program," Tom reported. "Species want to learn our approach to adaptation and innovation." In the hydroponics sectors, their advanced growing techniques had created a thriving agricultural center. The same abilities that other species had dismissed as primitive now produced crops with unprecedented efficiency. The evening of the summit's final day, the colonists hosted a traditional storytelling gathering. But now their audience included beings from across the galaxy, all eager to learn from their experiences. "We tell these stories," Mary explained to the assembled guests, "to remember where we came from and to guide where we're going. Our journey taught us that true advancement isn't about having the most advanced technology. It's about understanding how to use what you have in new ways." As the station's lights dimmed to night cycle, the asteroid belt that had once been their prison glittered with the lights of ships and new construction. They had transformed their refuge into a beacon of innovation. "We're no longer the outcasts," Mary reflected, standing in the observation dome. "We've become teachers, innovators, partners." Jack smiled. You've shown the galaxy that sometimes the best solutions come from unexpected places. The colony that everyone had turned their backs on had become a shining example of what was possible when natural abilities met innovation, when desperation bred creativity, and when one species took the time to see potential in another. They had not just survived. They had revolutionized what it meant to advance, one adaptation at a time. New Dell Station stood as a testament to the power of resilience, innovation, and the unexpected friendship between two underestimated species who changed the galaxy's understanding of progress. They had risen from the ashes of their lost world to create something unprecedented, and the galaxy was finally paying attention.